The auctioneer's gavel slammed down like a thunderclap, silencing the crowd. "Sold," he bellowed, pointing to the man in the back, his face hidden beneath a weathered cowboy hat. 18-year-old Clara stood on the rickety platform, her wrists bound, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst. She wasn't livestock. She wasn't property. But to her father, drowning in gambling debts, she was the only currency left to pay his price. As the crowd dispersed, Clara's eyes locked on the stranger who'd bought her. He stepped forward, his boots crunching the dry Texas dirt, and she braced for cruelty. Instead, his voice was soft, almost hesitant. "Come on, miss. Let's get you out of here." That was the moment Clara's life veered onto a path she never could have imagined, one of redemption, love, and a freedom she'd never known she could claim. Clara's life hadn't always been this bleak. She'd grown up on a small farm outside Abilene, where her mother's laughter once filled the air and her father's hands were gentle, guiding her as she learned to ride a horse. But her mother's death from fever when Clara was 12 changed everything. Her father, Tom, spiraled into grief, then into whiskey and cards. By the time Clara was 16, the farm was crumbling, and Tom's debts to men like Silas Granger, a ruthless loan shark, piled higher than the Texas plains. Silas didn't want money anymore, he wanted control. When Tom couldn't pay, Silas offered a deal. Clara handed over to settle the score. Tom, hollowed by shame but too weak to fight, agreed. Clara's world shattered as she was dragged to the auction block, her dreams of a quiet life buried under the weight of betrayal. The cowboy who bought her was named Elias Harper, a man of few words and fewer smiles. He was 32, lean and sun-worn, with eyes that seemed to carry a lifetime of unspoken pain. Clara expected the worst as he led her to his wagon, but Elias cut her ropes and handed her a canteen of water. "You're not my prisoner," he said simply. "But we gotta figure this out." His ranch, a modest spread 30 miles from town, became her new home. Elias gave her a small room with a quilted bed and told her she could leave whenever she wanted, but where would she go? Penniless, with her father's betrayal still raw, Clara stayed, wary but curious about this man who seemed to want nothing from her. At first, life on the ranch was strange and tense. Clara kept her distance, expecting Elias to reveal some hidden motive. She'd heard stories of women bought at auctions, their fates grim and loveless. But Elias was different. He worked from dawn to dusk, tending cattle, fixing fences, and never once raised his voice. He'd leave plates of food for her, simple meals of cornbread and stew, and ask nothing in return. Slowly, Clara began helping with small tasks, feeding chickens, mending clothes. She noticed how Elias treated his animals with care, how he'd hum old hymns under his breath. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Clara asked, "Why'd you buy me?" Elias stared into the flames. "Couldn't let Silas have you. Nobody deserves that." His words, plain but heavy, cracked something open in her heart, but trust didn't come easy. Clara's first challenge was her own fear. Nightmares of the auction haunted her, and she'd wake gasping, certain Elias would turn cruel. She'd flinch when he moved too quickly, and he'd notice, stepping back to give her space. Elias faced his own struggles. The ranch was barely breaking even, and whispers in town painted him as a fool for wasting money on a girl he didn't use as others might. Worse, Silas Granger hadn't forgotten Clara. He saw Elias's act as a challenge to his power and sent men to harass the ranch, cutting fences, poisoning a well. One night, a barn fire nearly cost them everything. Clara, coughing through smoke, helped Elias save the horses, and for the first time, they worked as a team. As the embers died, Elias looked at her, gratitude in his eyes. "You're stronger than you know," he said. Clara wanted to believe him, but doubt still gnawed at her. The second challenge was Clara's past catching up. Her father, Tom, showed up one day, reeking of whiskey and begging forgiveness. "I didn't mean it, Clara," he slurred. "Come home." But home was gone, sold to pay his debts. Clara's heart tore between love for the father she'd once known and rage at the man he'd become. Elias stood by her, silent but steady, letting her decide. She faced Tom, voice trembling. "You sold me like a horse. I ain't yours anymore." Turning him away felt like cutting out a piece of herself, but it was the first time Clara chose her own path. Elias didn't say much, but that night, he left an extra blanket by her door. Small gestures like that began to weave a fragile bond between them. The third challenge was Silas's wrath. He wasn't done with Clara or Elias. One evening, as winter set in, Silas's men ambushed Elias on his way back from town, beating him bloody and warning him to hand Clara over. Elias staggered home, refusing to tell Clara why he was hurt, but she pieced it together. Guilt crushed her. She felt like a curse on his life. "I should leave," she told him, tears falling. "This is my fault." Elias, bruised but firm, shook his head. "You ain't the problem, Clara. Men like Silas are. And I ain't scared of 'em." His resolve gave her courage, but fear lingered. They fortified the ranch, and Clara learned to shoot a rifle, her hands shaking but her aim true. The standoff came one snowy night when Silas himself rode up, demanding Clara. Elias stood on the porch, shotgun in hand. "She's free here," he said. "You got no claim." Clara, heart pounding, stepped beside him, rifle raised. Silas, seeing her defiance, backed down, his power broken by their unity. As spring bloomed, so did something new between Clara and Elias. Their bond grew through quiet moments, sharing coffee at dawn, laughing when a calf chased Clara across the pasture. Elias opened up about his past, a younger sister lost to illness, a family torn apart by grief. He'd bought Clara because he couldn't save his sister, but he'd found purpose in giving Clara a chance. Clara, in turn, shared her dreams of a life where she wasn't defined by her father's mistakes. One evening, under a sky blazing with stars, Elias took her hand. "You don't owe me nothin', Clara. But I'd be proud to walk beside you, if you'll have me." Her heart, once caged by fear, felt free. She nodded, tears shining, and they sealed a promise, not of debt, but of choice. Years later, the ranch thrived, and Clara and Elias built a life together, not as buyer and bought, but as equals. They faced new challenges, droughts, hard winters, but met them hand in hand. Clara became a voice in town, helping other women trapped by circumstance, her story a beacon of hope. The day she held their first child, a girl with Elias's quiet eyes, Clara looked back on the auction block and marveled. What began as her darkest moment led to a life of light she'd never dared dream possible. The story of Clara and Elias carries a message that burns bright. Freedom isn't just given, it's claimed through courage, trust, and the strength to rewrite your story. No debt, no pain, no fear can define you if you choose to rise. For every soul feeling sold or broken, there's a quiet cowboy or a spark within waiting to walk beside you toward a dawn where you're truly free.